Story 1. Not sure if it's true, but I asked this question during my physiology lecture. The professor answered that he is not sure, but his educated guess would be ultra-long-distance swimming, due to somewhat higher body fat and therefore better buoyancy. He guessed that in ultra-long distances, this could make enough difference for women to come out on top. Story 2. In the world of equestrian show jumping, men and women compete together with both horses and rider and horse combinations, and the results are varied. That is why we have more of a top 10 or top 20 in the world, but no one clear best. Story 3. In high school shooting, our men's A squad was constantly outperformed by the women's A squad. We had mixed events with men and women shooting together, and the parents of the men were complaining that it was unfair their boys had to compete against women. Story 4. It wasn't that long ago that the best women could compete with the best men in curling. Then a little bit of money got into the sport. The men put down the beer and cigarettes, picked up some weights, and turned the game into something pretty boring to watch. It was more fun when it was creative and based on finesse. Strength is more important now, so men dominate. Story 5. Ultramarathons. Research winners of Moab 240. Open water long-distance swimming. Gymnastics, specifically balance beam and floor routines. Women set the standard. Horse riding. Story 6. Any sport where a lower center of gravity is helpful, as women generally do have this feature. This explains their gymnastics and ice skating success, for example. Also, a few where women's energy partitioning is an advantage, such as ultramarathons. Some also argue that women can succeed in certain team sports because they have been socialized to more easily work in teams, but that is a skill that can be learned by anyone, honestly. Story 7. Something makes me think the user that responded, "That's great," to a post headline, "No Congress committees being run by women," doesn't have great intentions with this question. Story 8. I shot a rifle in college. It was a co-ed sport, and I routinely got beaten by my female competitors. I got beaten by the guys too, as I wasn't great, but the point is that women were quite competitive with men there. Story 9. Endurance. Now to convince more women to compete in endurance events. This year at the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc, for instance, out of the 2,700 starters, only around 300 were women. But 3 women were in the top 20. I'm not saying women have to want to do endurance events, but if we can get a higher percentage competing, I believe we might start topping these races. When I say competing, I mean actually competing with the aim of being competitive. There is a significant rise in females doing it socially and recreationally, which is great to see. If I can inspire a few more to give the competitive side a try, that would be excellent. Story 10. Women do better in some sports mentioned here because there are simply more women participating than men, such as horseback riding or synchronized swimming. However, one sport where women have been scientifically proven to have an advantage is ultramarathon running. After an extremely long distance, women seem to have an advantage over men for some reason. Many theories have been proposed, but there is no consensus. I suspect this may also apply to certain other ultra-endurance sports, possibly swimming. Overall, men have a physical advantage in most sports, but that doesn't mean that the goal should be to level the playing field between both sexes, in my opinion. I like both men's and women's tennis, but I don't think the goal should be to mix the two or prove that men and women have the same potential. Story 11. One area that research is showing females to be at an advantage is endurance events like ultra running. At shorter distances, the increased strength of the average male is better, but once you start getting into the much longer events, it becomes more about the body's ability to endure and manage energy, where females are believed to now have the advantage. I don't believe this has been clearly demonstrated in competition results yet, because ultimately ultra running is such a niche sport that there just isn't the female participation to show clear trends, but this is the data coming from current research. Story 12. Not sure why I'm getting downvoted. I noticed during the Olympics that women's technique in shooting is very focused, and they seem to use patience and controlled breathing as huge strengths. I truly believe that if more women joined the sport, they could consistently outperform men in this area. It's just not geared enough toward women at the moment. Story 13. Stand-up paddleboarding is easier with a lower center of gravity. It allows men and women to compete against each other without a huge advantage either way. Story 14. I think there is some confusion about the question. If you mean, are there sports where women significantly outperform men on average? Or are there sports where women almost always beat men at the elite level? There is essentially nothing. If you mean, are there sports where women can win against men with relative parity or slightly better than parity? Then there are some examples like long-distance running and gymnastics. Story 15. I scrolled pretty far to see if anyone said darts. I'm not talking about bar darts. I'm talking about high-level darts. There's no strength difference to take into account. It takes concentration, consistency, and an ability to do some math on the fly. Story 16. Badwater Ultra was won by a woman, and her name is Courtney Dawalter. Ultra long distances. Not consistent, though. It is a clue, though. Very long distances. Story 17. Extreme distance events. Women begin to have a statistical advantage in ultra running above 195 miles. The theories are: 1. The higher levels of estrogen and progesterone in their system are better for in situ muscle recovery. Testosterone allows men to grit through it at long distance, but at ultra long it comes undone. Women are more likely to have naturally higher pain tolerances than men. This is assumed to be due to an evolutionary advantage adapting to the difficult childbirth of humans. Story 18. I feel like it's important to mention that sports and their rules are constructs, and a lot of what we value in athleticism is specifically catered to men. Story 19. Skydiving. Gender is irrelevant in competition, especially at the highest levels. Being a strong guy is actually a disadvantage. Flexibility, core strength, and overall body awareness are far more important than brute strength. It's mostly a mental game anyway. Story 20. Women have the advantage in long-distance endurance sports and sports that rely on flexibility. Occasionally, they have an advantage in sports where petite people have the edge. There are also sports that are female-dominated, so women regularly come out on top because there are far more of them. Story 21. Consistently, they are better shooters like rifle and pistol shooting. As a guy who joined the United States Marine Corps and was in the infantry, it is always fun to remind sexist people that women are better shooters than men. Story 22. Some aquatic activities. Probably horse riding. Some aerobic activities for sure. I'm also with others who say archery and shooting-related activities. Anything where weight, flexibility, or general finesse is involved. Sometimes there are specific categories, I think. Probably a decent case for endurance-based activities given body differences, or even certain forms of rock climbing where it's less about strength. Just like men have obvious advantages in certain areas, women do too. As much as things have improved for women in some fields like athletics, it might still take a few generations for women to feel comfortable and accepted in trying certain activities more. It's very naive to think a lot of activities aren't discouraged in high school and college. Women are free to do this or that is a complicated argument I'm not sure people should use to question why women aren't better represented in the above fields if they could do better. Story 23. Yoga. Yes, it is also played as a competitive sport because women have an edge over it since they are generally more flexible and lighter than men. That's why they are able to do many advanced yoga postures more aesthetically and also hold them for longer time periods. Story 24. I would not think male physiology offers a natural advantage in pool, darts, riflery, auto racing, even if many of those sports are traditionally male-dominated. Story 25. Esports in theory, but not significant enough numbers to matter yet. Chess should be equal, but traditions are involved. However, the women are increasing in numbers. I have noticed a trend of upcoming women in chess retiring rather early and branching out into other fields instead. Tic-tac-toe, rock, paper, scissors. Conquer the world with the knife game from our youth. I do wonder if they have researched enough on women and men exposed to low gravity or near null gravity and how that would impact the genders differently. And if we survive and go into space, if it will alter our current sports. Story 26. Downhill speed skiing is a sport where women should be faster because the female body in a downhill tuck position is more aerodynamic than a man's body. Women have smaller shoulders and a bigger rear end. However, men always set the new speed record. Story 27. Scuba diving isn't really a competitive sport, but everyone still knows who on the boat is good and who isn't. Women use less air with smaller lungs to support less muscle mass, experience less heat loss, and have more graceful, efficient movement. I saw an interview once with one of the best cave divers and instructors in the world, a man, and he stated it as a fact that it was a shame there weren't more women in exploration. They are way better at it. In cave diving, flexibility and a narrow, adaptable body are lifesavers. Story 28. Unsupported endurance cycling can be challenging, but some individuals excel at it. Sarah Hammond nearly won the Trans-America bicycle race but took a wrong turn. She is a three-time race to the rock participant. Lael Wilcox has plenty of experience. Fiona Kolbinger won the transcontinental race in 2019. Story 29. My wife beats me in miniature golf courses 9 out of 10 times on vacations, and it drives me insane. Anytime our daughter needs extra assistance, like grabbing frozen raspberries, opening a LaCroix in the other room, or getting help with the remote or some form of technology, I am always coming up short in paper, rock, scissors. She destroys me in the arcade basketball games too when we take the kids. In essence, yes, women can outperform men in a variety of ways. It is rough out here. Story 30. Endurance racing. Not too sure what the numbers are for swimming and cycling, but for running, it's somewhere around 180 or 190 miles where women start performing better than men. It is an incredibly niche sport, and hardly any people participate at those sorts of distances. Shooting is another one where women often outperform men. Story 31. You are going to be looking for activities where balance and flexibility are more important than strength and speed. Various gymnastics events and figure skating. Story 32. Junior dinghy sailing. Girls mature faster, and strength isn't very important when boats are small. Boys have an advantage when it's really windy, but on light wind days, girls will excel. Girls are also smarter at a younger age, so there's a tactical advantage. Story 33. Any sport that favors hip opening will favor women. As far as I know, women's gymnastics, guys will spaz out and hit their groin so much, probably won't complete the whole routine. Story 34. Just on the physical aspects, some long-distance endurance ultrafoot and bike races level the field a lot. Even long-distance open-water swimming. Many women tend to do better than men. Those races tend to not rely that much on pure muscular strength. Story 35. Uneven bars. Because women have a better center of gravity, and a man's anatomy can be an obstacle. Also, balance beam. Because of the center of gravity. Ultra long-distance swimming. Women often score higher than men in recurve archery. Story 36. Women generally run faster than men in races that are longer than 195 miles. They compete together, but women are on average 0.6% faster at this distance. At 100 miles, men are still 0.25% faster. Story 37. Not saying that this is always the case, but for many male athletes, 1. Their training and exposure to the sport starts very young. They are steered towards stereotypical gendered sports, like boys playing hockey and girls taking gymnastics. Especially in the United States, school sports funding is very often piled on boys' sports, and girls' sports aren't given the same funding. In places where money talks, this gives girls the feeling that their sports aren't as important. Girls who excel or even just want to participate in sports that are traditionally boys' sports are often not treated well or as equals. They are bullied and ostracized. In 1987, a girl who earned a spot in a boys' hockey league, who was never called on the ice, took this discrimination to the Supreme Court of Canada. Story 38. Whether you want to call it a sport or not, barrel racing and cutting horses are events where, when it comes to the rodeo, the men shouldn't even bother showing up unless they're going to watch. Story 39. I would imagine any sports that are skill-based rather than strength-based, which reduces the physiological advantages from male biology. Shooting, curling, maybe archery, though that does require a lot of upper body strength. Also, things like artistic gymnastics or diving. There's also no real advantage to men in things like darts or snooker, but they don't attract many women, likely due to cultural reasons. Story 40. Ultramarathon running. I don't know why, but it appears men's strength advantage diminishes over long distances. Even a breastfeeding mom can outrun men. Story 41. Archery and shooting. Women are more accurate than men because they can utilize diaphragm breathing better than men, which means their chests don't move while targeting, meanwhile still breathing. We, on the other hand, take a breath and release it in bursts. While teaching us how to fire in the military service, commanders showed a method. We were supposed to shoot 3 shots. They say that you should take a deep breath, aim, release 1/3 of your breath after shooting your first shot. Release the next 1/3 after the second shot. And release the last 1/3 with your last shot. That being said, I'm not an expert, so no captain here. Story 42. I don't really know anything about horse racing, but given that jockeys apparently struggle to keep their weight down, I would think women would have a natural advantage there. Story 43. I've noticed that the men routinely time out on slippery stairs in both age groups compared to women. Is it because the men are constantly pulling each other down when they are so close to the top? Or is it because women are generally shorter and have a lower center of gravity? But true sports, ultra-endurance sports and shooting, in most sports they found before puberty there is little to no difference.